Well, good day to everybody. Doug Verley here once again from Entrepreneur Australia Capital Connect. Today I'm interviewing Andrew Haythorpe of Allup Sands, a silica producer. Very exciting project, and we're delighted to have you with us today, Andrew, to share some insight into your company and your new project. Thank you for being with us. To those who don't know about Entrepreneur Australia yet, I invite you to go and have a look at the investment platform, www.entrepreneuraustralia.com.au. This essentially is a place where Australia's leading entrepreneurs like Andrew and his colleagues have an opportunity to showcase what they're doing, and for Australian and global investors alike, they can have the opportunity to go and have a look at these new investment opportunities and to connect with the people that are starting these businesses and are going to come out with tomorrow's nice opportunities. So Andrew, over to you. Thank you so much for making time. Can I ask you to give me a bit of an introduction into yourself, your team, a bit of background, and walk us in, please?
Sure. Thank you very much, Doug. And it's a real pleasure to be here with you today. And it's great to have this opportunity. So Allup Sands, we recently set up the company about 4 or 5 months ago based on an extensive look around the world for high purity silica sand. So that's our real focus. We started off with a small team of 3 geologists effectively based here in Perth. I'm including myself as one of the 3 geologists. Mm-hmm. And we've progressively built the company up with a bit of a corporate team in addition to that. One of our geologists actually lives down in the southwest now, so he's locally located, which is an advantage. And then there's myself here in Perth and my business partners and directors here in Perth. Mm-hmm. And basically the company came about simply because we looked around the world for high purity silica sand. Where can you find it? And of course, anyone would know, go to any beach. You'll see generally white sand. Often that's high purity silica sand, but of course it's on the beach or it's next to the beach. And that's simply not available for people to mine to produce the things that we use silica sand for. So we went through more than a 6-month geological review around the world looking for opportunities where you've got good sand and the ability to access it in an environmentally friendly manner, with the potential to supply and deliver the world markets.
Fantastic. So silica seems to be gaining a lot of interest of late, quite a lot of momentum. Can you talk to the reasons why? What are the uses of silica? What are your sort of target markets? Where do you see the opportunity in the future growth?
Well, just to be clear for those of those in the audience who aren't familiar with Australian beaches, this is actually what we're talking about, which is high purity white silica sand. Mm-hmm. And what it's used for, of course, is mostly in glass manufacture, but more recently it's used to manufacture these screens on mobile phones, and perhaps more significantly in terms of tonnage, especially high purity silica sands. It's used in solar panels as well as high-tech applications, which are increasing in volume. So what's happened over the years is an increasing scarcity and a rise in demand. So silica sand in some ways is going through its own renaissance in a way where 100 years ago, for example, iron ore used to be a fairly low value product and you really needed to set up your steel mill next to an iron ore supply because it wasn't worth shipping iron ore around the world. Well, of course, since the 1960s, that all changed with the creation of the Australian iron ore industry, which is almost exclusively export, and the world markets, of course, where the demand for iron, and iron ore in particular, is sufficient to justify mining and exporting iron ore to the markets, especially China. So in the 2020 sort of period, as we sit here today, a similar sort of transformation is happening in the silica market. Silica sands, on one hand, it's increasingly hard to find in terms of high purity, good quality material. And secondly, prices are steadily rising as demand remains strong, but supply remains increasingly problematic. So that's really been the focus of our company.
Fantastic. And what company or your project stand out from others?
Well, basically, we were fortunate as we did our search around the world looking for opportunities and sources. One of our team members came across an old BHP drilling data set, which was actually looking, ironically, for another Broken Hill style deposit. In the process of BHP doing that drilling, however, they actually drilled through what was logged as pure sand. So, of course, that caught our eye. And so we went down and visited the areas where BHP had drilled previous to us. We sampled that sand, and what we found was very, very high grade, high purity silica sand at surface with extremely low iron and extremely low aluminium. So that's one of those aha moments where we thought, okay, this project's got some real merits and opportunity, and we need to do further work to define the actual tonnages based on the previous work, and also do some work on that high purity component where we think there's a real market opportunity for the next 50 years.
Wonderful. Andrew, where's your project located, and does that location have any particular benefits or challenges?
Absolutely. Well, the two projects actually, Unicup and Quinnanup, hence the name Allup. It's a bit of a West Australian thing. With Allup, we've got two projects, and they're actually located between Albany Port and Bunbury Port. So from a silica sand operations point of view, again, a little bit like iron ore, a lot of the business is logistics, it's mining, shipping and delivery. So the fact that we've got two projects, connected by road to two ports, where there is port capacity, and certainly a future where we see further port capacity available, where maybe one, maybe both projects will be developing sooner rather than later, and actually giving ourselves a great sort of news flow for the next few years.
All right, so ease of transport to ports is certainly a help, because I guess a lot of the consideration, the cost that goes into it is transport. Absolutely,
Doug, because ironically, with most mining activities that most people are familiar with, when you think about an image of mining, it's drill and blast. That's very energy intensive, it's very expensive. There's a lot of work that goes into technically managing a mining operation. Silica sand's wonderful because, as per the earlier demonstration with a bit of sand in the glass, it's free dig. There's no drill and blast. Grade control's very easy. It's at surface. So it's really, from a mining point of view, it's one of the easier things to manage by far. And then you're really looking at logistics. So one of the early issues that we identified was, of course, access to port. So we have talked to some logistics companies and got a feeling for what it will cost to get to port, to the Asian markets in particular. And we were quite encouraged by the numbers that we received in terms of economics and potential viability for the projects.
And if I take that thought just a little bit further, not only is this an enormous global market for silica, for glass.
Absolutely.
But it would appear to me, two things jumped out at me, and that is, one, Australia is potentially, I think, the fourth largest exporter in the world. About 6% of global production and export comes out of Australia.
Yes.
And then the leading sort of importers, or those demanding the product, are our Asian neighbors that are growing.
Absolutely.
And if you look at the growth of China over the last 30 years and sort of infrastructural development and glass requirement, we're extremely well positioned globally.
Yes, of course. And, one of the things which people don't necessarily think about, especially when we're thinking about the iron ore industry, especially here in West Australia, once you've built that building, which might have a steel frame or a steel substructure, and of course, concrete, heavy user of concrete. Concrete itself does use loam building sand. But of course, all buildings are clad with windows, and windows, of course, is a high purity silica dioxide or silica sand product. And when you start to think about all the buildings that have been built in the last 30 years across Asia alone, of course, like any commodity, there's been a vast volume of material consumed to put all of that glass on all of those windows. And what's actually happened is, over that period of time, local supplies and local sources of silica sand, which are often coastal, near the beach in many countries of the world, or the four dunes or waterways, they've really been stretched sort of beyond their capacity to supply. And increasingly, which is normal with any country that goes through industrialization, which China has rapidly. But if you go back 130 years ago, the US was in its process of industrialization, where it was drawing vast amounts of raw, commodity resources, because you were building all of that infrastructure, which is now what we call America. Chinese have just done that. But you get to a point where then the society grows or evolves, if you like, where they actually look at the environment and they're like, well, this is a bit of a mess. And that's where the environmental sort of issues start to come into play. And people want a quality of life, which is not having wonderful buildings, bridges and infrastructure and then having a terrible environment to live in. So
Yeah.
like anyone, they're going through that sort of transition phase. What that means is for sand in particular, it's tightening up. Sand resources are being locked up because we want to have a beach, we want to have a holiday, and we don't just want to work 52 weeks of the year with no respite.
And the quality of your product, now you might have touched on that just in passing earlier on in the discussion, but I think it's important to note, given previous discussions we've had, that the quality of your product is right up there.
Absolutely, it's right up there, and it's also in one of the projects is based on or situated in state forestry, which state forestry we're reasonably comfortable in discussing with them and working with them moving forward, so that we can access the sand and they get the gum trees that they plan to harvest. And the other areas is farmland, and of course the farmland from let's say a value point of view, when you're farming on effectively almost beach sand, it's not necessarily the richest or best farmland to grow things on. So it's, we see that we've got two project areas which are well located from an environmental consideration point of view and touching on that aspect of it. But then marry in, as you said, the quality thing, and part of the conversation, especially for people who've not looked at silica sand yet as an opportunity or an investment opportunity, you might immediately sort of cast your mind to the deserts of Australia or the deserts in the Middle East or, those sort of areas. And of course, the desert sands are typically red-orange colour. They're typically red-orange because of iron staining. So those sands are not suitable for the sort of applications like making glass, because it's actually expensive to use acid leach to remove the iron to then have a clean sand to then make high purity silica products. So that's really what we've got, is a very low iron, very low aluminium sort of high purity silica from the sampling that we've done so far and the near surface drilling that we've done just at a small scale. And of course, we're encouraged by what we've seen on the ground and also what we've seen in the drill logs from BHP.
Fantastic. That's a good place to start. Now,
absolutely.
The vision for your business, for the group company, what's the outlook? Where are you guys going to take this? Can you give us some sense of your plans?
Certainly, Doug. Well, look, the plans are, we're in the process of getting those permits granted, which is a normal procedure here in West Australia, of course, to process through application into grant. So we're hopeful that the tenements will be granted by November, December this year. Our plans are to get out there and drill, follow up the previous drilling that I've referred to, actually do a drill pattern that suits us. We've got potential tonnages in excess of 200 million tonnes of high purity silica sand at surface. So we actually want to drill that into an inferred resource. That's part of the reason why we're raising capital now for seed investors at an early stage. Once we've got that inferred resource, we'll then take that data. We'll use some of that sample, of course, to then do a customer study and an optimization study, which is simply, here's the sand that we've got. It's got some very special characteristics. Which are the customers around the world that are most likely to give us the best price, for want of a better term, who are going to value that quality in particular for their certain applications, whether it's mobile phones or solar panels or whatever they have as the ultimate use for the product is. And that optimization study will give us a feel for the revenue, which then leads us into effectively a feasibility study, which sets us up for project finance to then go into production and actually start producing sand and making money.
Wonderful. So how far out from revenue do you think you are? What's the plan there?
Good question. Best guess answer is probably 2 to 3 years, and that depends, of course, on all the departmental requirements and compliances that we have to go through, all the negotiations with various government agencies. But one of the real benefits with the silica sand projects is, certainly some of the plant in many cases is mobile, and that gives us a lot of flexibility and a lot of project de-risking, because if you put your mobile plant down and you want to change the location subject to finding more sand elsewhere, and as I touched on earlier, we've actually got 2 project areas already. It gives us finance flexibility as well as progress flexibility. So, and also speed, of course. If you've got 2 horses in the race, well, we'll see which one's the fastest.
Yes. Now, very encouragingly, you spoke about quite a short pathway to a listing. When do you anticipate listing, and
Again, best laid plans at this stage, Doug, is we're looking to do the seed raise now as per this conversation. We'll hope to have the tenements granted, as I mentioned a moment ago, by the end of this year.
Mm-hmm.
Drilling possibly in December, or if not December, then January, February. Inferred resource work. Drilling's actually very quick because it's at surface, so we don't have to drill to the centre of the earth to find it. It's right there under our feet.
Mm-hmm.
So get all that in place, inferred resources, probably looking at an IPO March, April, May of next year, all things going well, Doug.
As early as that, that's encouraging. Yeah, I know that will appeal to investors. They're always looking for that.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that you're looking for a seed round. We're
Correct.
looking at about 600 to 700,000 now, which is not a big capital. How's that going to be applied, Andrew?
About half of that will go into the drilling, the assays, and also bulk sampling type work. We'll take the drill samples and bulk up some samples, send them off to customers,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll do as much of that as we can over the Christmas, New Year, February, March period.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be probably about half of the application of funds, and the other half will be just the actual corporate admin work that's required to get a prospectus for either, an IPO front door listing on the ASX,
Mm-hmm.
or possibly we might even consider doing a backdoor listing if that's the more appropriate way to go forward. So, we're all shareholders in the business. Our team who set the company up, we've all put money in. We put cash money in as well as our time into this. So like any other incoming parties who invest with us now, we're looking also for a liquidity event, and then we're also looking for a dividend down the track.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like a lovely opportunity. It's one of those that's really for somebody like me with a simple mind, not hard to get my mind around.
Indeed. No, it's as far as mining goes, Doug, it's actually right up there with the simple stuff, I think, relatively speaking.
It works well for me. And I think it'll be a lot of people listening in today. So, Andrew, thank you so much for sharing. Just to say to the listeners that your team is available to be contacted via the details that are provided on Entrepreneur Australia. I'm there to be contacted. We've been appointed as corporate advisors to Allup Sand.
Yep.
And investors out there that would like a copy of the information memorandum, just go onto the platform, click, please send IM, and we'll get it to you straight away. Put a phone call through and we'll help facilitate discussions and get you as investors to where you want to be in terms of chatting to Andrew and to other colleagues. Andrew, we wish you every success, and we thank you for your time and for sharing with us, and look forward to the progress of Allup Sands moving forward.
Well, thank you, Doug. And from our side of the fence, we look forward to our new investors joining us on this journey. We've got a great team. We've got a very low cost and low risk exploration program lined up where we're just really defining what we've already found. We're looking at a very low capital and low threshold, low barriers to entry in terms of getting the projects up and running. And we're looking at a very low mining impact and a very low footprint and a relatively high benefit. So from an environmental point of view, we think also we've got a great project. So thanks very much, Doug, and thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Have a lovely day.
Cheers, you too.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.